Right, here we are where we left off in part 3, and we're quite far down the rabbit hole now, so if you've just joined us, I do recommend going back to part 1 to bring you up to speed on what we're doing. Now, before we get on with the animations, there is some housekeeping I want to do because I'm not very happy with some of the naming. I want to go down here, I want to change that to in top half, I then want to go up here, select all of these, and change that to at top. And the last thing I want to do is to change the half screen height to the half view height. And then we can resume again. All right, so animation time. The real magic of this stretchy toggle has a lot to do with the animation that we're going to be using to make it look like it's stretchy and bendy and all of that kind of thing. And we're going to use a spring animation for that we're going to define. Private let spring animation is equal to animation spring, and I'm going to pass in the values 0.2, 0.4, and 1. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I pulled these numbers out of the ether because I'm just that good. No, it took a fair amount of trial and error before I got something that behaved the way I wanted it to. So don't be afraid to play around with these values and really dial in the effect that you want. There are a couple of things that we want to wrap in animations when they occur. Now, we want to animate when we go from stuck equals true to stuck equals false, because everything happens when stuck goes from true to false. It goes from being stuck to not being stuck. And when you let go, it springs to either the top or the bottom. Those are the states that we actually care about as far as this spring animation is concerned. So all we're going to do is say, when we change the state of stuck with animation, spring animation, we put all that in there. Translation and at top also matter, and they matter in onEnded. So we're going to do the same thing down here. All right. So as we're moving it about in onChanged, it animates when stuck changes actually from true to false, but it will also animate when stuck changes from false to true. The translation is set to 0, and whether or not we're at the top is finally set in stone. So if we resume that, then our toggle should be almost fully working. And when it unsticks, it springs wonderfully into our arms, and when we release, it bounces down onto the bottom. But as you can see, the color immediately changes. And we don't want to use a spring animation for that because it would look rubbish. Well, I can show you actually. If I did the same thing here, right, now watch this. You see it flickers because it's a spring animation. What we want is a very quick ease in out animation for that. So I'm going to put it up here with the other one. Private let color animation, animation ease in out with a relatively short duration of 0.25. So that's the one we're going to use instead of that right there. And now, resuming for the last time, I can drag that, and then when it changes, it's much more pleasant to look at. And does it when potentially at top changes. And this is interesting, look at that. The potentially at top is animating itself, as in the debug information is animating. All of it is, which makes sense because they're all happening as part of the animation. But we can fix that and say in this VStack, I'm going to block all animations into that. So now as I do it, they'll all change instantly and not actually be animated. Right, at this point, our toggle is pretty much finished. Well, it is finished. So let's make sure that when we go into design mode, that design actually works the way we want it to. In order to accomplish that, there are a few changes that we need to make. Not many, but let's see what happens if I change designing to true. Okay, So we can design it like that, but we really want it to be bigger. So there are a couple of things that we can do that will accomplish this. The first thing is that we can make the frame conditional. That frame size we've got on line 68, we change that to a conditional modifier. We only want it to be that size if we're not designing, like this. Frame, if not designing, is the size. And don't worry about it going crazy at the moment. We'll sort that in just a second. But we also want to put a positive frame. If we are designing this, I want the frame to be 0.9 times the width. That's easy to do. Once again, frame, if we are designing, is the width scaled 0.9. Now, you could certainly argue that you could accomplish the same thing with a ternary in one line. But my counter argument to that would be that the declarative nature of this more verbose version is easier to reason about. However, since both frames are driven off the same Boolean, I would actually be happy with either in this case, since I think they are both perfectly clear. But that's only if using PureSwiftUI. If doing it natively, I would probably extract a constant and do it like this. So that's our shape ready to be designed, but it would be nice if it were in the middle. And we can easily do that by saying if we're not designing, then we put the spacer in. Okay, and now we've got a shape that we can easily design, but with the change of one constant, we have a working toggle like that. We can get rid of that. And there you are. Now, I did promise that we would look at the anchored to the top version to show you what that would look like. So let's do that now. And I'm going to use an anchor in the scale here. But bear in mind, if it's at the top, we want it to be anchored to the top. And if it's at the bottom, we obviously want it to be anchored at the bottom. And we do it like this. We put an anchor in at top. Yes, then it's the top. No, then it's the bottom. Just like that. Now we also need to change the calculation code because we don't need to do any of that funny stuff with the translation now. So offset for translation becomes, and I'm going to add this guard here, not stuck. It's only when we are not stuck that we want to have an offset for any translation, because since we are anchored to the top, the scale is going to push out just the right amount to keep up with our drag. So it replaces the translation until we become unstuck. And as you can see, as I drag this, we get exactly the same behavior. So there we go. That's our toggle finished. And then just for a laugh, we can go down here and I can set the frame of this to 50,300. And then I'm going to clip a capsule with a stroke of black and a line width of 2. I'm going to put a background on it of a capsule with a fill color of gray. I'm going to overlay that with another capsule with a fill color of white, blurred, with a radius of 10. Then I'm going to say that the blend mode of that is multiply. I'm going to set the width to be the full width. And now we've got an interesting, if not entirely practical, toggle on our hands. But ultimately, it's the techniques you've learned during this series that will hopefully help you explore the limits of what's really possible. So there you have it, a large, sticky, and stretchy toggle in SwiftUI. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, can it be done in React Native? Well, fortunately for you, William Candillon, in his aptly named series, Can It Be Done in React Native, is answering that very question right now, and should have a tutorial out very soon indeed. Barry, when's it out? It's already out. Is it? Right. What's that? A week ago. Okay. Right. It's been out for a week, so clearly he is much more efficient at getting these things done than I am. However, you should check out his channel. He's got a lot of great content on there, and he explores similar themes to the ones we explore here, but from a React Native perspective. So give him a look, you won't be disappointed. Great channel and a great haircut. If you like what's going on here, then give it a thumbs up. It keeps me very happy indeed and helps people find the channel. And if you want to subscribe, I'm not going to stop you. In fact, I very much encourage you to do exactly that. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me. See you next time.